Kia ora and welcome back to the HRPI. I'm Marie Tovio. Today's case is the Resignation Ruse, when someone says, "I'm resigning," in the heat of the moment. First, it's important to acknowledge the very real temptation for managers to want to accept a rushed resignation straight away at times, particularly where the relationship has been strained, emotions are running high, or the manager just simply feels exhausted by the situation. In the moment, it can feel like the problem has just solved itself, but that instinctive response is often driven by relief rather than risk awareness. And it's exactly in those situations that employers are most exposed if the resignation later turns out to not have been genuine. Good faith under the Employment Relations Act in New Zealand means you must resist pouncing on impulsive resignations. A resignation given under high emotion may not be binding if not genuinely intended by the employee. So the expectation is not that employers talk employees out of resigning, it's about ensuring the decision is clear, voluntary, and defensible if it's ever scrutinised later. A short cooling off period, followed by written confirmation, is often all that's required to meet that obligation and significantly reduce risk. There are certain red flags that should immediately prompt caution by the manager receiving such a resignation. These include resignations given during or immediately after a disciplinary, performance or restructuring meeting, resignations made verbally or by text message, resignations accompanied by visible distress or anger, and situations where the employee has very little time to reflect. The more pressure or emotion involved, the greater the obligation on the employer to pause and check the intent. So, what do you need to do when your employee advises, in what could be considered the heat of the moment, that they are resigning? Firstly, pause. Don't accept it immediately. Then clarify. Send a neutral note perhaps, saying something like, "You indicated in our discussion," or in your email earlier today, as the case may have been, that you may wish to resign. Please take some further time to consider whether you do wish to resign, and then let me know in writing in a day or two. Should you still wish to resign, I will consider your request then. Then, confirm details. So after the 1 to 2 days, if they confirm that they do still wish to resign, write to them to accept their resignation. In your letter, you can set out the steps taken to ensure they had fully considered their decision so that you could be confident that it wasn't made in the heat of the moment. You can also mention things such as their notice period from their employment agreement, when their last day of work will be, when they'll be paid their final pay, when they should return any company property, and other things relevant to their employment ending. If they retract their resignation after taking that extra time to think about it, and depending on the circumstances, you might want to consider whether a performance or behaviour conversation about the situation that resulted in their statement that they would resign could be warranted. And keep good documentation. Keep clear records of all of these steps, such as keeping a copy of your acceptance letter or the notes of the performance discussion on your files. Accepting a resignation given in the heat of the moment carries real risk. If the employer accepts it immediately without checking whether it was genuinely intended, the resignation may later be challenged. In those circumstances, the employer can be exposed to a personal grievance, often framed as constructive dismissal, on the basis that the employer failed to act fairly and in good faith. The risk increases where there has been conflict, performance discussions, disciplinary pressure, or an emotionally charged exchange immediately before the resignation. So, what are the key takeaways? Don't rush to accept heat of the moment resignations. Provide time to reconsider and confirm intent in writing. Maintain professionalism and keep accurate documentation of discussions and decisions. The information in this podcast is provided as a general overview of key employment topics in New Zealand and does not replace tailored advice. Every situation is different and the appropriate steps can vary depending on the specific circumstances. If you're unsure about how to proceed in your workplace, I encourage you to seek advice and support. Feel free to get in touch with me directly. The mystery isn't whether issues will arise. It's whether you'll handle them like a pro when they do. Mā te wā.